This is also a time of change for my family. Catherine becomes Queen Consort. In recognition of her own loyal public service, I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely.
The order reached the royal household before sunrise, sealed beneath the king's personal insignia, and marked for immediate enforcement. There would be no negotiation, no private delay, and no quiet compromise. King Charles had issued an emergency decree banning Queen Camilla from every official royal residence. By breakfast, doors once opened at her approach were being guarded, and the woman who had fought for decades to stand beside the crown suddenly had nowhere within it to go. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles entered the locked room at Clarence House, carrying a folder no one dared mention. His private secretary waited beside the keeper of the privy purse, the official managing royal finances and household spending, while two advisors stood. The king remained standing. He opened the document, read the page, and signed an emergency decree, a direct sovereign order taking effect without delay. Its words were absolute. Camilla could no longer reside in or enter Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Clarence House, Sandringham House, Balmoral Castle, or any crown-controlled residence without written permission. The monarch pressed the pen against the table, his fingers rigid around it. No one moved. This was not victory. It was a private collapse at the center of public power. "Enough is enough," he whispered, and the exhaustion in his voice frightened the officials more than anger. Security teams immediately canceled her access credentials, suspended her household privileges, and blocked her staff from removing belongings without supervision. A confidential annex, an additional sealed section attached to the decree, described a breach of trust serious enough to endanger the royal household. Camilla received the message at breakfast. She lifted her cup, heard the first sentence, and froze. Her aide repeated the order slowly, but the queen consort shook her head as though the words could not be real. Then came another blow. William had been informed before the wider family. The prince's early knowledge suggested he had either been consulted or already understood what drove his father to act. She reached Clarence House, demanding answers. Instead, her access card flashed red. Camilla tried again, then ordered the guard to contact Charles. He lowered his eyes and explained that no private meeting could occur until the decree was fully enforced. Behind the locked entrance, the king remained alone with the sealed annex and the decision that had shattered their household. Yet the decree was not merely removing a queen from a collection of buildings, it was tearing apart the relationships, promises, and private bargains that had held Charles and Camilla together for most of their adult lives. For years, Charles and Camilla had presented themselves as survivors of a storm the world once believed would destroy them. They endured public anger, family resistance, scandal, and decades of judgment to reach the throne together. That history made the decree more than a royal punishment. It transformed every sacrifice, every defended choice, and every promise between them into evidence inside a marriage that was now collapsing behind guarded doors. Charles had always believed Camilla understood the loneliness behind his position better than anyone else. Long before he became king, she had listened when duty felt like a prison and expectation felt heavier than affection. That was why the decree cut so deeply. It was not simply an order from the sovereign, the ruling monarch who carries final authority over the royal household. It was a rejection issued by the man she had spent decades defending. Camilla had built her place carefully. She had accepted public hostility, supported charities, formed trusted alliances, and waited through years when even her future title remained uncertain. Now she sat in a borrowed room beyond crown property, holding an old photograph of herself beside Charles. When an aide entered, she turned it face down with sudden anger. The queen consort did not explain. She simply stared at the table and said the palace had forgotten what she had endured to reach it. William felt no satisfaction. The prince had wanted his father to confront the growing tension, yet relief quickly gave way to discomfort. He had watched one royal marriage collapse under public judgment before, and he understood how quickly private pain could become national spectacle. Anne sensed that conflict during a private conversation, and told him that Charles had kept a written record of disputes for months. The Princess Royal, the sovereign's senior working sister, explained that the notes showed dates, warnings, and arguments. This had not been one burst of anger. Annabel Elliot urged Camilla to challenge the decree before silence became surrender. Her sister spoke fiercely, but she refused to answer the central question. "He knows one version," Camilla said, and those words changed the room. Annabel pressed her, yet she would reveal nothing more. Charles entered their former bedroom alone. He noticed her reading glasses beside the bed and stopped. Instead of ordering them removed, the king placed them gently inside a drawer. The gesture exposed what the decree could not erase. He was furious, wounded, and still unable to treat their history as meaningless. Then a senior courtier uncovered the detail everyone had missed. One royal residence had appeared repeatedly in the king's private record, and a gathering held there had become the center of his suspicion. To understand why Charles closed every royal door to the woman beside him, the story must return to the single night when a private dispute crossed the boundary between marital resentment and a threat to the crown. The decree did not begin with a legal memorandum or a constitutional warning. It began 3 weeks earlier at Sandringham, during a private family dinner intended to demonstrate unity. There were no cameras, no public speeches, and no outsiders at the table. Yet before the evening ended, Camilla would make one demand: William would leave the room in fury, and Charles would realize that the struggle inside his own household had become impossible to contain. Charles had arranged the dinner to settle the growing dispute over who would control the royal household in the years ahead. The household was more than palace staff. It was the network of officials, advisors, and employees who managed royal duties, residences, and access. The king wanted peace between his wife and eldest son before private resentment damaged the line of succession. Anne attended because her brother trusted her judgment, while Catherine joined William because the decisions under discussion would shape her children's future and their place within the monarchy. Camilla waited until the meal was underway before placing a prepared document on the table. She spoke calmly, but the demand was explosive. The queen consort wanted permanent authority over residence assignments, senior household appointments, and access to several royal properties, even after William became king. The prince read every page, set the proposal flat before him, and accused her of trying to preserve power beyond his father's reign. She struck back immediately, telling him he was already behaving as though Charles's authority had begun to fade. Charles slammed his palm against the table. The monarch ordered them both to stop, yet the silence that followed only deepened the damage. Catherine lifted the document and noticed a clause restricting future access for members of the Middleton family. She asked why her relatives had been named at all. Camilla replied that private families could not be allowed to influence crown property, but the princess understood the message clearly. This was no longer a debate about duty. It had become personal. Anne said little during dinner, but later she examined a second copy left among the papers. The Princess Royal discovered distribution markings showing that selected household officials had already received the proposal. That meant Camilla had begun seeking support before asking for the king's permission. She brought the discovery to Charles in a documented private briefing, and his expression hardened as he realized the plan had already moved beyond the dining room. William rose and left without finishing his meal. Catherine followed him, while Anne remained close enough to hear what came next. Charles asked Camilla whether she had circulated the document behind his back. She avoided the question. The king slowly removed his wedding ring and placed it beside his untouched plate. Before dawn, he ordered a confidential review of her communications. What the investigators found would force him to confront his wife without advisors, relatives, or ceremony to protect either of them. The Sandringham dinner created the wound, but the confidential review placed something far more dangerous inside Charles's hands. Proof that demanded a confrontation neither husband nor king could avoid. Charles waited until the household had withdrawn before calling Camilla into his private Study. No aides stood nearby. No secretary prepared a record. On the desk lay a narrow red file containing dates, messages, and instructions issued in her name. When Camilla entered, the king did not offer her a chair. He touched the file with 2 fingers, looked directly at his wife, and said, "Tell me you did not do this." Camilla stopped beside the desk and stared at the folder. The confidential review had traced calls and written instructions from her office to residence managers and senior staff across the royal household. That household was the network responsible for royal schedules, properties, employees, and official access, which meant any order sent through it could carry enormous weight. Several messages were written as though Charles had already approved the proposed changes. Officials could no longer tell whether she was expressing a private wish or using delegated royal authority, power formally exercised in the sovereign's name. The queen consort did not deny that her office had made contact. She insisted she was protecting herself from the day William became king and decided she no longer belonged. Years of fear broke through her controlled voice. She had survived public hatred, uncertainty, and the long struggle to secure a recognized place beside Charles. She would not, she said, allow everything to disappear the moment his reign ended. Charles leaned forward. The king told her that fear did not give her permission to use his name, his household, or the crown against his son. Camilla reached for the red file, but he pulled it beyond her grasp. Then came the question neither of them could escape. Had she ever trusted him to provide for her? "I trusted you as a man," she answered. "I did not trust what happens after you." The words struck harder than denial. Charles opened the folder and revealed an instruction seeking to reserve Clarence House for Camilla indefinitely, regardless of the wishes of the next sovereign. The residence was not merely a home. Control over it meant status, staff, security, and continuing influence at the heart of royal life. She argued that another family member had privately urged her to obtain written protections. The monarch demanded a name. She refused. Camilla stood firm, but the silence between them had changed. Charles removed his glasses, closed the file, and told her to leave. She remained where she was, waiting for him to soften. He did not. The king crossed the room and opened the door himself, without looking at her. After she left, Charles called William and Anne separately. The prince heard anger in his father's voice, while the Princess Royal heard something worse, finality. Both understood that the next decision would determine whether this remained a private, marital collapse or became an enforceable act of royal power. The marriage had now reached its emotional breaking point, but Charles still faced a harder question: whether a wounded husband could make a decision powerful enough to bind a queen. A royal residence is never merely a home. It is security, symbolism, access, status, and influence made physical. To remove Camilla from those spaces, Charles needed more than anger. He needed authority capable of surviving resistance from her household, her allies, and the machinery surrounding the crown. As officials gathered around the king, every clause became a test of whether Charles still controlled his own court, or whether power had already begun slipping into competing hands. Charles sat at the center of the briefing, while legal and household advisors explained the limits of his reach. As sovereign, the reigning monarch with final authority over the royal household, he controlled entry to occupied royal residences and could withdraw access from anyone serving within them. Yet privately owned estates required separate written instructions because they belonged personally to him rather than to the crown. That distinction mattered. One careless phrase could leave Camilla with a route back into the very spaces the order was meant to close. William urged his father to act without hesitation. The prince warned that a temporary compromise would give her staff time to challenge the decision, move records, and present the king as uncertain. Camilla's household had spent years building influence, and any delay could turn a private separation into a struggle between competing offices. Charles heard the force in his son's voice, but he also recognized the danger. If the response appeared to come from the future king, the decree could be dismissed as an heir pushing his stepmother aside. Anne challenged William's urgency. The Princess Royal warned her brother that humiliation must not shape the wording. Once signed, the document would define his marriage publicly and become part of royal history. She reminded Charles that power exercised in rage could protect the institution while destroying the man behind it. William disagreed, but she held her ground. Both wanted the crown protected. Neither agreed on what protection should cost. Charles asked them to leave. Alone, the king reread the instructions issued through Camilla's office and pressed his thumb against his wedding ring until his hand began to shake. Then a senior official entered with alarming news. Members of her household had begun moving document boxes from Clarence House, and sensitive correspondence might disappear before security could secure it. William returned and offered his own trusted staff. Charles refused. The monarch insisted that the action must belong to him, not to his heir. He took the draft decree, crossed out the clause allowing Camilla 7 days to comply, and wrote 2 words in its place: effective immediately. The order left the room before her personal copy did. Security offices received it first, access systems changed, and guards were instructed to enforce the decision without exception. By the time the sealed envelope reached Camilla, the decision had already moved beyond private grief, and the first consequences were waiting for her at the entrance she once crossed without question. Camilla arrived expecting confrontation, but what awaited her was colder than an argument. At the private entrance to Clarence House, the security light flashed red. A protection officer she had known for years stepped forward, addressed her formally, and explained that her access had been withdrawn by direct order of the sovereign. For several seconds, Camilla did not move. Then she looked beyond him toward the closed door and realized Charles had made certain she could not return. Security teams had already deactivated her electronic credentials across the royal estate. Household managers received sealed lists naming the rooms, offices, and archives that had to be secured, while her official staff were told to suspend operations and preserve every record for review. The royal estate meant the network of palaces, residences, offices, and protected properties used by the monarchy. The order left Camilla's assistants trapped between 2 authorities. They had served the queen consort, yet the king now controlled whether they could enter their workplaces or even continue their duties. Camilla told the officer that her medication and personal correspondence remained inside. He offered to contact a supervisor, but she lifted her hand and stopped him. The queen would not beg at a door she had crossed for years. She returned to the vehicle, removed her gloves 1 finger at a time, and turned toward her stunned aide. "Do not let them see me cry until the gates are behind us," she said. Her voice held, but only just. Charles received the enforcement report in his study. The king read that the order had been carried out without incident, and visibly flinched. Success should have brought control. Instead, it confirmed that his wife had obeyed because she had been given no choice. When William met him in the corridor and began discussing security, his father interrupted. "She thought I would never do it," he admitted. The prince fell silent, because the words carried no pride, only the grief of a man who had proved his resolve by destroying her last certainty. Then the situation darkened. A document box removed by Camilla's staff before the lockdown could not be located. Palace officials feared it contained correspondence linked to the disputed power plan. One senior aide resigned rather than face questioning, deepening suspicion that the effort had involved more people than Charles first believed. Camilla demanded that her remaining team cooperate, yet she refused to explain what the missing box contained. That evening, she dismissed every advisor and sat alone. The queen consort wrote a message by hand, folded it once, and ordered it delivered directly to Charles. She asked for one final private conversation, not as sovereign and consort, but as the 2 people they had been before duty, fear, and the crown stood between them. With her titles unable to open a single royal door, Camilla abandoned strategy and reached for the only bond she still believed might matter, the private history she shared with Charles. They met in a small private house away from palace staff, guarded corridors, and royal insignia. Charles arrived alone. Camilla was already waiting beside an unlit fireplace, with no private secretary and no prepared statement. For the first time since the crisis began, There was no institution between them. Only a husband who believed his trust had been used, and a wife who believed the future had been closing around her long before the decree was signed. Charles had agreed to come on one condition: no lawyers, aides, chief, or family members would enter the room. Without officials present, neither side could hide behind negotiated language or allow another person to soften the truth. Camilla acknowledged that she had circulated the residence proposal, yet she denied trying to challenge William's future reign. The future reign meant the period when the prince would inherit the throne and gain final authority over royal households and residences. She insisted that she had wanted security, not control. Camilla told Charles that decades of public rejection had changed her. The queen consort had learned that affection could disappear under pressure, while written protection survived. She remembered being treated as temporary, unwanted, and unworthy of a permanent place. Now she feared that once her husband was gone, every promise made to her would vanish with him. The king listened, but her pain could not erase his own. He reminded her that he had defended their relationship through scandal, anger, and years of judgment. Using his authority without consent made those sacrifices feel meaningless. Camilla removed her wedding ring and placed it between them. She said she had never wanted the crown more than she wanted certainty. Charles did not touch the ring, but his expression changed. For one moment, the monarch saw not an opponent fighting for influence, but the woman who had spent years believing she could be pushed aside again. Then she named the family advisor, who had urged her to secure permanent residence rights. Camilla explained the encouragement through a recorded private conversation she had, preserved after becoming suspicious of the advisor's motives. The disclosure cleared William of secretly driving the plan, but it exposed something darker. The palace factions had recognized her fear and used it to widen the divide. Charles made his decision. He would not remove her title or erase her years of public service, but the residence ban would remain. Trust, he told her, could not be rebuilt through rooms, staff, or privilege. Before leaving, the king lifted the ring, closed her fingers around it, and told her to keep it, not as a promise that their marriage would return to what it had been, but as proof that their shared past had been real. Outside that room, officials were already preparing the public announcement. Charles and Camilla had reached their personal understanding, but outside that quiet room, Britain was waking to a royal rupture that would be interpreted through headlines, crowds, and the unforgiving language of history. By midday, the decree was no longer a guarded palace secret. News alerts interrupted broadcasts, newspaper websites replaced their front pages, and crowds began gathering outside royal gates. Some saw a king finally asserting control. Others saw an aging marriage being punished in public. But one image overwhelmed every argument: Camilla's car turning away from Clarence House, while a uniformed officer stood beside the entrance she had used for years. Buckingham Palace released a tightly worded statement, confirming that Camilla would continue selected public duties, but live outside active royal residences under a revised household arrangement. That phrase meant her official work could continue, while her staff, living access, and influence inside the royal estate were sharply reduced. Broadcasters called it the most severe internal separation of Charles's reign. Constitutional commentators stressed that the ban was not an abdication, divorce, or removal of title. The queen consort remained queen, but the physical center of royal power had closed around her. Charles watched the coverage alone. The king remained still until one presenter described the decision as a public repudiation of his wife. He switched off the television before the sentence ended. The decree had secured authority, yet every headline reduced years of shared history to a locked gate and a broken marriage. Camilla heard demonstrators arguing outside her temporary residence. When one supporter called her name with visible sympathy, she stepped away from the window. Anger she could resist. Compassion threatened to break her. The next morning, a national newspaper filled its front page with the closed gates of Clarence House beneath 4 brutal words: "The Queen without a palace." Copies appeared at stations, cafes, and palace offices before breakfast. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered beneath umbrellas, as reporters spoke over competing chants. One woman approached the railings and placed a handwritten card near the gates. It read, "No crown can survive without trust." The message captured what the shouting could not. This was no longer only a marriage crisis. It was a national argument about whether personal love could excuse the misuse of royal power. Then the palace issued a documented update. The missing box had been recovered unopened from a staff storage room, weakening claims that Camilla intended to threaten Charles with private correspondence. The Queen's position remained damaged, but the darkest suspicions surrounding her began to fade. William released a recorded statement supporting his father's decision without condemning his stepmother. The prince spoke of duty, stability, and respect, signaling that he wanted the conflict ended rather than turned into permanent humiliation. Charles heard the statement in silence and understood what his son had done. The future king had defended the crown while leaving room for mercy. When the shouting faded and the gates remained closed, the decree's true meaning emerged from beneath the scandal. Charles had chosen the authority of the crown, but he would carry the emotional cost as a man. The emergency decree did not end with a dramatic arrest, a vanished title, or a final act of revenge. It ended with two separate homes, a marriage permanently changed, and a monarchy forced to declare that access to royal power could never be treated as private protection. Charles remained king. Camilla remained queen. But the doors between their personal history and the institution they served had been closed, and neither of them would pretend otherwise again. Camilla moved permanently into a privately arranged home outside the active royal estate. That estate was the network of official residences, offices, and protected properties used to carry out the monarchy's work. The residence ban remained fully in force, while Charles approved a reduced public role, allowing her to continue selected charitable engagements. She could still serve causes she had supported for years, but she would hold no influence over residence management, senior appointments, or future household planning. The Queen accepted the arrangement in a signed written statement delivered privately to the king. She acknowledged that fear had driven her to seek guarantees she had no authority to create. Her words offered no excuse. They carried the painful recognition that the security she tried to preserve had cost her the dull trust she needed most. Charles returned to Clarence House and stopped beside the breakfast table where Camilla once sat. The monarch understood that protecting the institution required him to surrender the comfort of their former life. William and Anne then helped establish stricter rules for household authority. The prince and the princess royal ensured that no consort, heir, advisor, or family faction could issue instructions in the sovereign's name without clear written approval. Their action closed the weakness that had allowed personal fear to become a struggle for royal power. Charles and Camilla refused to attack each other publicly. He did not erase her service, and she did not expose their private pain. That restraint prevented the crisis from becoming a campaign of humiliation and honored the real history they had shared. Weeks later, Charles received a private letter from Camilla. The king read it alone, folded it carefully, and placed it inside the same drawer that held her reading glasses. He did not destroy the message because his decision had never meant their past was false. It meant love and loyalty were no longer enough to excuse broken trust. Camilla lost the royal residences she had tried to secure. Charles lost the companionship he once believed could survive anything. The crown endured because its authority was shown to have rules, limits, and consequences, even for the person closest to the sovereign. The monarchy emerged wounded, but clearer about the line between private fear and public duty. The royal doors remained closed, the decree remained unchanged, and history recorded the moment with a final verdict. Charles protected the crown, but he did so by accepting that the life he built with Camilla could never be restored. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.